How's it going, guys? It's Bookfangeek, and this is going to be kind of off the cuff because, well, I'm kind of struggling to get this done before May's out because I really only like to record when my family is out of the house, and I never wake up that early, so I'm also going to be kind of groggy today, so we'll see how this goes. So last year, I actually did end up doing a piece for MERMAY. It was a piece that I did with Caleb and Dan, and I drew them as mermaids because, you know, it's MERMAY. That's how the theming works. And I thought, you know, even back when I made it, I didn't think it was very good. Something about it, especially the background. The background looked disgusting. It was just outlines and backgrounds don't really mix when you're trying to do a painterly style piece, really. At least it doesn't for me because of the way I do line art, which is not very detailed, and so everything looked kind of flat, and then I did this weird thing where there was just a mountain of randomly shaped colors in the background that I think was supposed to be a coral reef. I don't know. Either way, the piece that I made last year, I was not happy with it, so I decided I wanted to come back and see if maybe I could make myself happy with it. And looking at the piece that I created this year, yeah, I'd say I achieved that. I honestly was not very happy with it while I was making most of it, and it wasn't until I stepped back and zoomed the piece out and looked it over did I realize, oh, this is actually pretty good. I don't know, I kind of have felt like I'd been stagnating in my art for years, so the fact that I've seen such improvement in just 1 year is really encouraging to me. I don't know. I've always been the type who really enjoys redrawing pieces because, I don't know, I just never feel like my art is changing and it's not getting better until I look at something directly. And also I kind of like to show my past self, like, hey, you kind of suck, look what I can do now, haha, but you can't do this. Yeah, so I suppose I should talk a little bit about the character designs and why I made them colored the way that they are. So in the final piece, you genuinely can't tell, but everything about their colors has been changed, at least somewhat. I know that Dan's eyes and hair are blue, his skin is green, and Caleb, although, like I said, you can't tell when it's shaded, his skin is yellow, as well as his hair being purple, and his eyes also being like a lilac color. And I think, like I said, this is a redraw. I'm not sure, I didn't really fully pay attention to what was going on with the piece when I chose the colors back then, but it definitely has to do something with their representational colors from Power Pills. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna get randomly groggy because, like I said, I just woke up. But I thought it would be a nice touch to kind of work in some sort of mystical element and changing their skin tone and their hair color to be something a bit more matching of the brightly colored mermaid tails would be something cute to do. And yeah, it does definitely add to the mysticism of the piece, although it does kind of make Dan blend into the background a little bit, but you know what? Shh. So let's talk a little bit about the changes I did between the two pieces. So I did something very, very rare with the redraw of this piece. I actually thumbnailed for once. Yeah, I don't usually thumbnail my pieces, mostly because I've never really changed much between a thumbnail and a final piece. Usually I just go with the first one. But I was having some trouble sketching the final piece, so I decided I might actually have to, you know, try some stuff out before going into the final piece. And I'm glad I did. I actually did my best to work with the composition of this piece. I tried to put Caleb into a third of the piece, and I tried to put Dan into a third of the piece, so I followed the rule of thirds, which is something I don't usually think about. And I also did my best to make their poses more dynamic and flowing and to kind of point at the more important pieces, like Caleb's tail being right behind his head, kind of making his hair stand out from the background. It helps him jump forward in the piece. And let's see, going back to the poses, yeah, I also did my best to make the poses more dynamic, because in the original they were very flat, up and down against the screen, and I didn't think that was very exciting, and it also kind of didn't make sense with what they were doing in the piece, which was observing. In the original piece it was coral, in the new piece I ended up doing a necklace. It would make more sense that they were swimming up to it instead of just observing it while staying in place. So I figured I'd make it look like they were swimming up, although perspective is not my strong suit. There are some pieces, or there are some parts of the piece where the perspective is a little wonky, especially in Dan. With Caleb I could avoid it a little bit because most of his body is hidden, but Dan's got the arm that's going all the way back, and just, yikes. And then I mentioned it earlier, one thing I also changed about this piece was the necklace. In the original piece, I don't know, that Caleb is reaching toward a coral piece that he thought was cool, which, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. They're mermaids, they live underwater. I'm assuming they live by this coral reef if they're just casually swimming around it. Seeing a piece of coral would kind of be like one of us, a human, reaching out toward a bush because they thought the bush was beautiful. I don't know. I don't know, it's weird. So I figured I'd add a little bit more of a story element and, you know, have this locket that appears like it's not a locket, it's just a regular necklace with, I think, a ruby or something in it. Something that's been tossed off the side of a ship and is just landing, and Caleb is very curious about it, and I made it red on purpose because there's another character in Power Pills that is represented by the color red that, you know, some fans seem to like the idea of them. Another thing that I really tried with this piece was I made the background lineless. Mostly because, like I said, I didn't think the original piece was working with the lined background, but that's mostly because I'm terrible at lined backgrounds. My line art is too thick to do anything more than cartoony, and this piece was kind of supposed to be painterly, so, you know, I just had to work with what I got. I also did my best to actually work with references this time around, which I did do a little bit for the original, but I didn't end up actually replicating it because I got lazy. Yeah. I think that's my biggest pet peeve with the piece, is the background, and it's all just because I did not want to add in detail or reference backgrounds because I was too lazy. This time around, I was actually able to figure out the depth of the piece through the backgrounds, and I figured out just how quickly everything dissolves into blue when you're underwater, and so there are 3 little lumps in the background. One's in full color, one's a little green, but there's some color in it, and the back one is pretty much just the blue, but lighter. And then the foreground, I figured I would add some, you know, kind of blurry foreground elements just to add a little more depth to the piece, and I think it added a lot. And I made sure to keep the rays of sunlight coming through, though when you think about it, if there's rays of sunlight coming through, you're probably going to get that light under the water pattern, and I'm only going to say that was partially because I was reading Siren's Lament, and the artist for Siren's Lament really likes to use this underwater lighting pattern on her characters, and I was thinking, oh yeah, that should probably be a thing I add. And the final and most stark contrast, I think, has to be the shading. I don't know what happened over last year and this year, but all of my shading has gotten more intense, more contrasty, and I've been less afraid of using shading. I think that's one of the biggest things about my art now, is instead of just covering the little edges of the characters, I'm going full out and covering almost half of the arm and then erasing it back. Mostly because I think this year is the year that I learned that subtractive shading is what I'm good at. I've never been good at adding shading, or additive, I guess is what you would call it. I really work best when I'm taking shading away from the final piece, and so that's what I did. And it definitely worked better than it did last time. Let's see, do I have any final thoughts about Mermay? Yeah, I mean, I would love to do a full Mermay challenge, but I've been so busy with power pills. Because of school, the buffer has been just hammered. I'm supposed to have 17 pages, and that got taken down to 11 pages because of finals week in school and just how much work I had to do. So, unfortunately, I couldn't do any full-on challenges. I do plan on doing Art Fight this year. That'll be my challenge for July. Maybe I'll do Inktober, but I actually did plan out all of the updates for book 3, and goodness, the updates go from 3 pages a week to, I literally can't post less than 5 pages a week for most of these updates as soon as school starts up. So I don't know, we'll see what I do about challenges in the future. I definitely can't record the Inktober ones because I'm gonna be in a dorm. I only have my phone camera, and I do want to do everything traditionally, so let's see what else is coming up. I'm also working on an animated story time. I finally and so that should be coming I don't want to say soon. It took me forever to get just one minute of this thing done, and it's 9 minutes long. And I'm also thinking about doing another sort of something more related to my username than anything else I've tried before, but we'll see when that actually comes about. I always make big promises, and then I realize I don't actually have time to keep those promises, so we'll see what happens. Power Pills is still going. You should read it. Caleb and Dan are great. They're coming back soon with the pages that I'm making, though it's going to be another month or 2 for you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to check out all of my social media. Everything is Bookfangeek except for Twitter, where I am One-Eyed Elitan, which is just one-eyed and then Natalie spelled backwards. And be sure to check out my Patreon, where you can get early uploads and works in progress, and sometimes I'll draw your characters. And a big thank you to all of my patrons, including Haidn Clark, John Klein, SkyYT, Suckeychicken, and Zachary Mullins. Be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications, because I never post on a schedule because my types of videos take a long time to make. And I will see you in whatever my next video is.